more on all of this with two of the Blake family attorneys, B'Ivory LaMarr and Patrick Salvi Jr. They were both at the meeting between Joe Biden and the Blake family. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining us. B'Ivory, let me start with you. Jacob Blake actually joined this meeting with the Bidens over the phone from his hospital bed. We heard those details from Joe Biden and Ben Crump. Crump says Jacob Blake shared about the pain he's enduring right now, and the vice president commiserated. Those are the words from Ben Crump. What more can you share about this conversation?
You know, I would say that the conversation with Jacob and Vice President Joe Biden, it was very, very touching. Just to hear Jacob narrate, you know, some of the issues and challenges that he's had after enduring this very tragic situation. It was very disheartening just to kind of understand. But what we seen was, you know, Vice President Biden show a great degree of empathy, and that also shares stories and challenges of medical challenges that he's personally had. And I thought that helped ease the burden a little bit to some degree for Jacob. I thought that he was encouraged. I thought it was also encouraging just to be in that room, just to kind of hear that. So I felt like it was just a really good show of character, and I think it's something that we all can grow from in unity. And I thought that was very telling of Vice President Biden.
And B'Ivory, is it an encouraging sign that Jacob Blake felt well enough to have this conversation? What does this conversation say about how his condition is right now?
You know, I think Jacob is still in a great degree of pain. He did describe that. He, you know, like as I mentioned, he talked about a lot of the challenges that he was still having on a day-to-day basis. But I think that one of the things that Jacob talked about was his children, and I thought that was very telling. He talked about the strength that he has will hopefully be imputed into his children to kind of go through this ordeal that he has. So I felt like Jacob is still, you know, it's still tough. He's just a very, very strong person. And I think it's encouraging. Personally, for me, just being in a room, it put me at a place of just looking at life and just looking at how precious it is and how we take things for granted. One of the things that Jacob said was God would not put anything on him that he couldn't handle. So I thought that just goes to show the tremendous strength that Jacob has as an individual, as a person.
Absolutely. That's a hopeful sign. And Patrick, what did the Blake family want Joe Biden to hear? What was the main message from the family?
Well, there were a number of things that we discussed as a group, and a couple of things that I think are particularly relevant under the circumstances of what happened in this case include a much stronger effort in training and in application that police work to de-escalate situations. What we've learned from witnesses and what we see in the video as it unfolds is that these officers went straight to violence, beating him up and then ultimately shooting him. So de-escalation being a major theme, and then among others, the use of body cams. One can only imagine that if body cameras were implemented on a more widespread basis, that there would be greater accountability, that when police associations, as in this case, have tried to claim certain facts, the body cams would tell us the truth and give us transparency. And when an officer is wearing a body cam, that officer knows that, and that officer knows that whatever he or she says is going to be recorded, and so they have to conduct themselves appropriately. So those were two of the important things, among others, that are particularly relevant to what happened here.
And how did Biden respond to all of this? Did he sound like he was going to get on the case, Patrick?
Absolutely. I think what we heard from Vice President Biden is that he is very supportive of measures that allow police to better do their job, and that will help improve the relationship between police and the African American community. The sense that we got, and that I believe the family got, is that this is about moving forward and using this moment to improve those relations so that we can all feel safer in our communities.
And B'Ivory, I want you to watch what the Attorney General, William Barr, told Wolf Blitzer last night about systemic racism, and then get your reaction after that. Let's listen in.
No, I don't think they're two justice systems. I think the narrative that that the police are on some epidemic of shooting unarmed black men is simply a false narrative. I think there are some situations where statistics would suggest that they are treated differently, but I don't think that that's necessarily racism.
B'Ivory, what's your response to that?
I find those comments particularly disturbing. I think that evidence has bore out that it's clearly systemic racism in our country, and that racism exists. This is a situation that's been ongoing for years. The country is not in an uproar because of a rare or random circumstance. This is a continued pattern that we're seeing across this country, and I think that that's very evident. I think that black and brown people disproportionately are murdered for misdemeanors. And it's always a justification. It can't just be, oh, well, even if Jacob did obstruct, that's a misdemeanor in the state of Wisconsin. You don't get shot 7 times in the back for that type of circumstance. And I think it has been echoed across this country that Caucasians, Americans would not have went through the same circumstance that Jacob did. So I think it's clear that, people are not protesting across the country off of something that is just unusual. This is becoming too common. So I think that Attorney General Barr's statements are very disturbing. And I think that type of rhetoric is divisive. And I think at a time where we really need to be united.
All right, B'Ivory LaMarr, Patrick Salvi Jr., we're glad to hear that Jacob Blake was well enough to join this conversation, and thanks for joining us this evening. We appreciate it.